Hello, this is Abina at Cross Keys Crafts. The other week I filmed a video on how I created this card. This was another idea, another video for creating a card with just one ink pad. I will link to the other video below, which was the one where I used the Lucky Clover. And this one was supposed to be a video on how to use the Lost Shadow Distress ink. Distress oxide. And as soon as I'd finished filming, I thought, no, this card just looks really, really boring. And although I tried to get different textures with the one colour, the idea is not too bad, but it doesn't really work for the Lost Shadow. It just looks too boring. I used my gel plate, I ink blended here, I stamped with different textures over it, I coloured it in with some watercolour made with the Distress Oxide, but it's just too plain, the card. And I nearly dismissed it and threw it in the bin when I thought, no, I can actually jazz this up. So if the video doesn't get too long, I will keep the original footage after the introduction here, and then I will come back to this. You will be able to see from my fingernails that are different, and I will show you what I do to actually change the look of this and make it so much more interesting, obviously by introducing new colours. Immediately after filming the video for this card, I had another thought. Sometimes my mind goes really, really mental if I've got all these creative ideas. And I thought I'd do another video about another ink pad, just using one ink pad, and this is the Lost Shadow. When I got this, I wasn't quite sure whether I would actually use it, but I think it's an absolutely lovely colour and so versatile. I don't have a lot of Distress Oxides, and I've only got the one green Distress ink, but I thought I'd show you another version of how to use this as the only ink colour on one card. But I wanted to show you a different method. In the last video I used 2 stencils and a stamp, and today I'm going to use my little round gel plate. And I've also got 2 stamps here. This is a butterfly and a fob watch with some flowers. These are, let me just show you, these came with a free magazine I got from Craft Stash 2 months ago. It was actually a box with a magazine and loads of bits and bobs, but any stamps will work. I knew I wanted a little butterfly, and I just found this one and I thought this would go really nicely. And I've already stamped these on just some thin cardstock as a mask. You can use some Gina K masking magic. I have already stamped them in the Lost Shadow just to get an idea how solid they are. I hadn't prepped the stamps though, this is why it's very faint. And I have fussy cut these. I cut off the antenna though. And what did I want to say? Yes, if you ink blend over masks, make sure you have got the same colour, because I've done that in the past thinking, oh, I'll just do it in black, and then I ink blended over them and the colour came off the mask onto the actual piece where I ink blended. This time it doesn't really matter because we're going to use a gel plate, and I'm not going sort of round it as such. So I have put this into my stamp platform. You don't need a stamp platform for this. I have done this because I wasn't quite sure how solid the first stamp would be, and just in case I need to stamp them again, it's easier to have it in the stamp platform. I'm doing it straight on my card base. This is my 6x6, or rather 5 7/8 by 5 7/8 piece of cardstock. Pardon me. From the works. And my gel plate, let me just measure it, it's the 4-inch one, so I'm going to link to that below. And I've already had a look. I want this to be a bit higher because I want to leave some space for sentiment down here. So I already had a look and where I place my masks. I'm laying down my masks first, and I'm going to do the stamping later. You could do it the other way around if you wanted to, but I prefer it this way. And I want these images to be partially covered by the gel plate and partially be outside. And I think I'm just going to move this one a bit further to the edge, but not too high. And yeah, I'm thinking happy with the butterfly. So I'm just leaving my gel plate on these two pieces of acetate just to be able to move it around and have a look. I'm also going to work on this now. So I'm happy with this now at the moment. I'm just setting this aside without hopefully shifting the butterfly and the croppers. You could glue these down with some removable adhesive, but I always find removable adhesive is not always fully removable, and I don't want to stamp over that afterwards. So with this here now, let me just get some scrap paper. So all I want to do with this is ink it up and put some texture on it. So I'm just using this. You can use a brayer. I might do that in a moment. I'm just seeing how well this comes off on the gel plate, and it's always very difficult to see on gel plates. I might just apply a bit more and use a brayer to spread this out. See, there is a lot there. I don't want too much ink on it. Don't know if you can see this now. A lot of little speckles. So I'm just getting my brayer ready and I'm going to spread this out. So I'm just rolling my brayer over it just to get a bit rid of the harsh lines without taking too much of the ink off. You can see how much ink there was actually on there, although it's very difficult to see. I think I'll leave it at this. So now I've got here some foam packaging, and all I want to do is just dab that on there and just get a bit of a pattern on it. You can use loads of things. You can use lace, would be lovely. Anything. I've used netting from some fruits, you know, anything is possible. So what I want to do now is just keeping it on the acetate there. I can hover it. Let me just move that over a little bit. I can hover it over this, making sure it's even on either side and leaving a bit of space at the bottom. And I'm just pressing it down now. And once I've got this here now, I'm cautious not to shift the masks or the gel plate, but I can press it down a little bit. One thing I forgot to do that you can do is just put some water spritz on it, some water splashes. That sometimes gives a nice texture. And also, depending on what colour you use, the darker the colour, the bigger the effect. So as I said, I'm making sure, especially around the masks, I'm making sure I'm pressing this down so I've got a crisp edge where the masks are. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to lift this up and hopefully it's left some nice colour down. There we go. Hope you can see that. It is faint on the video. Sometimes the video picks up more than I can actually see on the screen here. So I can have a look at it now whether I want to add anything else on there, but I think I'll just leave it because I want these videos to be really, really quick. So I'm now using my stamp platform, just moving this to the side, to stamp these on there. So I'm laying this back as it was into here, and my little butterfly. I'm going to stamp the sentiment separately because it is from a different stamp set, and if I've got different heights, that sometimes can get tricky. So picking these up. So I'm now going to ink this up with the same ink pad, making sure I've got lots of ink on these. I thought about beforehand whether I should do this on craft cardstock. I know it gives a really nice look, but I thought I'd do it on the white one first. So now you can see it. I could have moved this in a little bit, but it doesn't matter. So I'm just giving that another ink. Sorry, just inking this up again. Just get my pressure to load. Yeah, this is better. Still a bit of, as I said, I'm not quite sure how detailed these stamps are, so there might actually not be that much detail there. And again, with the antique look, it might not matter really. So just seeing if I can get a bit more detail here in the middle. Yeah, it's a bit better there. So I'm contemplating whether I need to add something there to the edge. I could do that because it is a bit plain at the moment. So let me have a quick think and then I'll come back. So I've decided to do a bit of ink blending here on the edge just to give a bit more definition. And I want to create a mask for this side. So what I'm doing is I'm taking these off the gel plate and I'm just using the residue ink on the gel plate to work out how big the gel plate is. And I can then easily cut a mask from this. Nope, it's too faint. So what I'll do is I quickly ink this up and I'll do this again and then I can show you what it looks like. So I've just inked it up with my ink pads. That's why I've got this pattern in here, which actually could also be interesting if you wanted the lines going through here. If you have got darker colours, usually the second generation stamp usually works. So I'm just getting my scissors, I'm just cutting into this and then just cutting around, speeding this up now for the video. So I'm putting a bit of tape here on the side so it doesn't flap open again. And then I can use this as a mask for the edge there. So I'm getting my ink blending brush out, and what I want to do is just to add a bit of the Lost Shadow on this side and at the bottom. So I'm just picking this up now. I'm not too worried about having too much ink on this as this colour is so light. So I'm holding the mask down firmly here. Sorry if my hands are casting a shadow there. And I'm just going round here like this, and it is actually taking the speckled look away a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Just going around like this. I'm trying to avoid the butterfly and just fade out towards the edge there, and I'm doing the same at the bottom. Just holding this in place. Be cautious not to get outside of the mask and end up on the card. And I'm just going around on the bottom. So when I take this off, I've got much more definition here on the image. So I'm still contemplating whether I need a little bit more interest there. I think I will do a little bit of stamping on the gel plate print here. I'm just finding some stamps that I can use. Okay, so I have found this script stamp. It's also got some fern on there, so I thought this would be really nice to go with the background. So I'm using my mask again, just putting that down there, And I'm just placing this right way around. I'm not even sure which is the right way. And I think it'll just be big enough to go from side to side, maybe not. Tell you what, I might even just put it that way around. Just contemplating. It's also, I need to clean this before I do that. It's got some black ink on it, so bear with me whilst I clean it up. So I'm glad I noticed that before I stamped it down. So I've decided I'm going to put it a bit sideways just for some texture. And I'm being conscious not to put any ink on the top or the bottom here because I don't want this to stain the card in the background. So I'm just picking it up like here. It's important that the mask will stay. We'll actually put the mask down with the magnets. So, and then just inking the middle up. Sorry if I'm going off screen there. So, and I'm firmly pressing down where I've got the mask. Yeah, I like that. I need to put a bit more ink on the top there. And it's not really legible what it says, but it gives a nice texture to the background. Yeah, I like that. Oops, sorry about the noise in the background there. So I think I will though, you know what I've forgotten? I've forgotten to cover the footwatch. So I've stamped over that. Well, never mind. Just contemplating whether I should go in with my ink blending brush and just fade that out a little bit. I might just have to stamp over that. I'll have a look. Silly me. Have a look what it looks like. Yeah, sorry for the thinking break. Yeah, I'll have to do something about that. This is what happens when you think you're in charge and you know what you're doing, and then your hands do something that your brain doesn't. Never mind. I think I will just get a few little stamps out and just fill this up a little bit to just add a little bit more of interest. And yeah, then I will put down the sentiment. Yes, not all is lost. Let me zoom in, by the way. I just decided to just stamp over this and make it a feature. And this is a script stamp from the same magazine. So I'm just using that to stamp over the footwatch there. Just for some extra texture, but take away from the diagonal lines. So I will just stamp this over on the top here. And it's not ideal, by the way. I've got my stamping acrylic block is a bit too small. It doesn't matter. It doesn't actually show very well, and I'll tell you why, because I haven't prepped it properly. So let me see if I can possibly pop it in the same place. Always prep your stamps by rubbing them, especially the ones that come with a magazine, because they usually have got some residue on them and then don't stamp very well, and I keep forgetting that. So with this one, just going to rub it like this. You can also use what's it called, a baby wipe. So, and I'm just using this one now here to stamp in here. That's a bit better. So I think I will do one more on the watch just to take away from the other bit I just messed up. Yeah, not perfect, but I think it's okay. So I'll tell you one thing you can also do with your ink pads that I might do on this one here, is just to use the ink pads as watercolor, because I think I can enhance a few features here. So I'm just using a little tile here. Let me just zoom out again. Just putting the ink on there. Just need a little bit of water. Oh, this is where my water bottle is. And then all you need is a brush. And then you can pick this up like normal paint and you can paint with it. So because I think I need a bit more definition now here at the top. So just sort of colouring these in. And then they stand out a bit more. And I'm doing the same with the side here. Just going round. And that way it lifts it off again a bit from the text stamping now there. So I think I might just actually do the same with the butterfly. And again, by using the ink as watercolors, it's got a different color to it. I saw Lou Collins do a video about the Lost Shadow recently where she swaps all the inks and finds matches for them. And I find, let me just take this off now for a moment, when you use the water, it actually looks a bit pink, whereas when you just stamp it, or here with a gel plate, it looks like a grey. So I think this is quite nice now. Not too happy about this script stamping here, but it doesn't matter. Just looks like it's a bit undefined texture there. So all that's left for me to do now is to do the sentiment. This is not from the magazine. It's this one here, wishing you all the happiness you can imagine. This is from a sentiment set. Let me just show this to you. It's from this one here. I'll stick all my sentiments or my stamps down on these pieces of paper, and I've got them in folders. I will do a video soon about how I organize my craft room, and I'm going to link to that below. I think I got that from Amazon. So I just want this to be down here. So again, I'm inking this up off screen. And I'm not used to using my stamping platform from that side, but I wanted to put the card in this way round. Yeah, it needs another ink up. Obviously, if you've got the distress ink to go with this, you can play around with that. But as I said, my video is supposed to just have one ink pad, and I've only got the oxide here. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that now. It's a bit faint. I just need to put a bit more ink on the Imagine. And that's a good thing about the stamping platform. You can just stamp it twice or 3 times if you need to. Yeah, this is better now. So, there we go. Just take this out. Yeah. I think this is a pretty card, very minimalist, obviously, with the colours, but with the colour, sorry, I should say. But you can obviously use a different stamp pad, or if you wanted to, use two that are very close to each other and have a play around with those. So what I decided to change the look of this is I want to re-stamp these elements that disappear just with another brownish colour, which is the vintage photo. And then for these main elements, the butterfly and the fob watch, I would like to introduce my copper embossing powder. And I think that would give enough texture and enough interest to make this a nice card. So I'm just going to realign these stamps where I had them before. I'm on my stamping platform. Sorry, I just need to lift up the camera off screen because otherwise I will knock it with my stamping platform. So I've just aligned this very roughly because it's very faint on the background anyway. It doesn't really matter if I do have it off a little bit. So just on the side here, I'm inking this up in my vintage photo. And then I'm just re-stamping this. And you can already see it just gives so much more contrast. So just cleaning my stamp on the side just in case I don't align it correctly. I don't want any residue to come off just yet. So. Do that again with this one. And then once more here. The other thing I had done as well is I had forgotten to mask this, but now that I'm going in with a different colour, this will disappear in the background anyway. Yeah, and I've definitely off stamped that. It's not on the right position, but it doesn't matter. It more looks like a shadow now. Don't know if you can see that. So that will not matter once I've stamped the fob watch over it. I will quickly heat set this because I don't want the embossing powder to stick on these leaves here. I just want them on the fob watch and on the butterfly. So I'll come back in a moment when I've heat set those. When I heat set my card, it started warping, so I've just decided I'm going to cut it apart, and I can then mat this on a different card base afterwards after I've cut it down, so I can have another play with it as well on the outside. So if that happens to you, just rescue the card and just use it on a different card base. So I'm just realigning my stamps now, so I'm hoping this one will at least be properly aligned. So just press it down on one side, lift it up. I can already see it's not in the right place there. It's a bit tricky, but again, if I've got a bit of a shadow, it doesn't matter because again it will be just that, just a shadow. The same with the butterfly. I think this should be right fine. It's really difficult to see because you always have got a little bit of a silicone edge. So I shall pick these up, ink these up with my Versamark stamp pad. I've already used my anti-static powder tool on this, so that should be fine. Just getting the pressure tool. So then I'm getting a piece of paper. So unlike my more frequent papers, I've got my not so frequently used embossing powders just in these small boxes. So we'll just pour this on here, and then the residue or the excess can go onto the paper and then back into the box. Just give it a bit of a tap. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Maybe a bit more on the top. Yeah, that's better. So this can go back in the box. So now I'm heat setting this off screen, and then I come back and show you what else you can do with this. After I had heat set both the butterfly and the watch, I decided to do the sentiment as well. So I think that ties in very nicely. So my thought was to dismiss the idea of having this as a sort of monochrome card, and I decided to introduce another colour. I really like the look of copper together with turquoise. So I'm just getting my alcohol marker out, and I decided to paint in the butterfly and the roses. So I'm just going over this. Obviously the embossing powder resists the pen very nicely, so it's quite easy to colour this in. So now I think I will find another colour just for the leaves here, and then I will go over this with a sparkle pen just to tie it in a little bit with the shiny look of the embossing powder, and then I'll show you what we do with the edges. So I don't know if you can see the sparkle, but I think that ties it in really nicely. So I just used my clear sparkle on the blue, and the green one is actually a Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. So I just want to tie in the turquoise colour on these now, just on the edges, and I'm using my Elements by Lavinia Stamps Blue Atoll, and I've already inked up my brush. So I just want to come in on the side, and I have, by the way, cut this down a little bit to 5.5 by 5.5 now, just because I know I want to put it on a card base and I want this to be a bit smaller. So I'm just coming on the edge and I'm just inking this up, and that will tie in. Oops, I've just bent it. So be careful if you've got thin cardstock. You can glue this back down afterwards, I think. So I have to ink up my brush a little bit. What you can do, rather than putting it on a piece of paper, is just to put it in the lid, and then you can still use it at a later date. So I'm just coming in again here. It's almost a bit too much now. I might have to go around the other side again, I think. So as I said, pick this up rather than going back on the ink pad. Yeah, I think I will just go in once again on this side because I was very light-handed here. Yeah, and I will pop this on the card base now, and I'll show you the finished card. I might add a few embellishments. I'll have a look now what it looks like once I've glued it down. So here's my finished card that I rescued from the bin. I'm really pleased with this now. I'm never sure about embellishments though. I know you have to, or ideally you put them in groups of 3. I'm always a bit hesitant with rhinestones, although I really like the colour of these to go with the alcohol marker. But yeah, I'm really pleased with this card now. I think it came together very nicely, and if you think so too, you might want to give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of what I'm creating, I post videos 2 to 3 times a week. You might want to subscribe to my channel. I'd be very happy about that. And I'll see you soon with another video.